folks, this is Miriam from Premed Muse. Today I'm going to take you through a play-by-play of how I edit the first couple paragraphs of a personal statement. This is the original version. Now take a look at what my final mocked up version looks like compared to the original. That's where we got to, track changes and all. So I'm going to walk through with you what I did to bring it to the edited version. I want you to have a really good idea of what we're starting with before we dive into edits. Pause the video and read what the original 2 paragraphs say. I'll put the text in the movie description too. By the way, you may hear a happy baby in the background. I hope that's okay. So what we see here in this paragraph are 2 separate stories. One story that ends right here, and then the other story that takes up the second half of the paragraph. These stories tell pretty much the same thing. They tell us that the author was disenchanted with the way that the medical facilities dealt with these patient situations. He wasn't happy with them. He was concerned about the role medicine was playing in these people's lives. You're pretty happy, bud, aren't you? So I asked this author, what are these 2 stories accomplishing? And he explained, well, they're both helping me introduce the fact that I was uncomfortable with some of the way that medicine worked. You know, it helped me understand that medicine is more than just visiting a doctor. And I said, great. What does the first story accomplish that the second one doesn't? We read over them and determined that they were accomplishing the same thing. Every line in your personal statement is precious real estate. You don't want to repeat concepts in there. I asked him, which one would you prefer to have in your personal statement? And we talked a while about that. One of them left a patient untreated, the other one left the patient with the promise of treatment, but the promise seemed a little bit arbitrary. And I asked him which one he thought represented better his desire to express what he's leading up to for the rest of the personal statement. Suffice it to say that for his purposes, he decided that the story of the CT scan was most appropriate. So even after fleshing out and rewriting this whole paragraph in a way that felt fuller and told the story thoroughly, we deleted the whole first story and focused just on the second story. So we're starting this editing process with a mass delete. Great. The second story starts, another patient was in need of an immediate CT scan to confirm, etc. Now, this isn't the way we want our personal statement to start. First of all, it's obvious something was deleted. Second, there's nothing hooking the reader here. So let's start out this personal statement with some action. You'll need an immediate CT scan. The physician said. And we need to know where the author fits into this story. So maybe not just the physician said, but maybe it will introduce ourselves or the author here. The physician I scribed for said. Next up, we want to learn why this person needs an immediate CT scan. And that should be CT scan. Let's say we have the information in the next sentence. Acute abdominal pain due to kidney stones. Let's say he was concerned that her acute abdominal pain was due to kidney stones. Great, we have our sentence there. Next sentence. Because of her insurance, she would have to wait 2 weeks in order to get the scan. Okay, this sentence does what we call info dumping. It is giving us information rather than inviting us to participate in the action. So let's make it a little bit more dynamic and interesting to read, and a little bit less, let me inform you of this situation. Because of her insurance, she'd have to wait 2 weeks in order to get the scan. They had to find that out somehow. So let's say, however, when we consulted her insurance, we realized she would have to wait 2 weeks in order to get the scan. There's more action in there. It's a little bit more interesting to read, incrementally more interesting to read, but incrementally is important in your personal statement. The very next sentence is furthering the action and helping us understand the situation even further. After speaking on the phone with the physician, the insurance consented to the CT scan being done in 72 hours. Okay, that's a really different story than what we just saw. We thought that she'd have to wait 2 weeks to get the scan, but now something has changed. The way it's dropped in here, though, it's not obvious that this, it's really easy to gloss over. It's not obvious this is a big change. So let's make it clear that our story is progressing here, that we're not just presenting information. So after speaking on the phone with the physician, the insurance consented. Let's have the physician speak on the phone. So the physician spoke to the insurance company and they, let's say the insurance company, consented to the CT scan being done in 72 hours. What I'm doing right now is an example of copy editing. Most style guides prefer 72 to be written out like that. It looks cleaner and it looks more like a story and less like data. And we want this to look like a story. So I wrote out 72. Side note, copy editing note. Back to substantive editing. Okay. Again, the patient was demoralized. Could she make it in 3 days? Could she make it 3 days in severe pain? We gave her pain medication, but her symptoms worsened. We gave her pain medication, but if her symptoms worsened, she would have to go to the ER. She thanked us, wiping at her eyes, and left the room. The author's obviously bringing emotion into this, wants to make it clear that this was hard to see, that he was connected emotionally to the patient. It wasn't just a lifeless, bloodless observation of what's going on. But what it doesn't do is call out the arbitrary nature of the change from 2 weeks to 72 hours. If she's in so much pain, and if they could lessen the waiting period to 72 hours, why couldn't they just give it to her immediately? Of course, there are legitimate answers to that question. But the author at this point, being a medical scribe, just sort of being wallpaper in this situation, he doesn't know that. And that's obviously really frustrating for him. Now, I learned this through talking with the author. I talked through why it frustrated him so much and why it was so hard to see the patient demoralized. So even though it didn't explicitly say this, I didn't come up with it. It came up in conversation with the author. So the patient was demoralized. Could she make it 3 days in severe pain? This is where the discomfort with the situation comes in. Why couldn't the insurance allow her to get the CT scan immediately if they were able to override the initial 2-week waiting period? That presents his main frustration. Okay, we gave her pain medication, but if her symptoms worsened, she'd have to go to the ER. Baby. This isn't distracting, right? Is it okay? Okay, let's keep going. We gave her pain medication, but if her symptoms worsened, she would have to go to the ER. She thanked us, wiping at her eyes, and left the room. Okay, before we dive into the next paragraph, I'm just going to do a few copy edits here. We gave her pain medication, but, if her symptoms worsened, another comma, she would have to go to the ER. I would only leave this ER if we are reaching a character limit. It's, first of all, it would be better to say emergency department. A lot of physicians and providers within the emergency department don't like being referred to as a room. Second, it's just neater to write things out. So for now, I will leave that. I might make a comment or a note, but we'll leave that for now. She thanked us, wiping at her eyes, and left the room. I'm going to change that to wiped at her eyes for parallelism. She thanked us, that's a verb ending in ed. She wiped at her eyes and she left the room. These are all things that happen. The next paragraph is where we're really going to be working magic. We're not just telling a story here. We're going to talk about why we told the story. We're going to talk about the relevance of that story. What the author has now is, I've wondered whether the woman we turned away was able to find another doctor, which, by the way, is no longer relevant because we deleted that story. I have also wondered, we're gonna take away that also. We might be taking away the whole sentence, I don't know, but I just don't want to leave it in there and forget about it later. I've wondered whether the woman with kidney stones was able to wait 3 days. It was through these experiences that I started to realize that medicine and certainly health encompass much more than simple visits with a doctor. This line is effectively referencing the woman we were talking about, but we were just talking about her in the previous paragraph, so we can delete this line altogether. Once again, we have these experiences. We only talk about one experience now, but I find it's more believable to say that, you know, my decision to become a doctor didn't come from just one experience. It came from a conglomerate of various experiences. So I'm going to change this to this and other similar experiences that I started to realize that medicine and certainly health encompass much more than simple visits with the doctor. Okay, medicine and certainly health. At this point, I asked the author, what do you mean by medicine and certainly health? We looked back and realized that what he's talking about is healthcare. Using the phrase medicine and certainly health, that may sound like it flows fine, but it's not giving us any extra information. So I'm going to change that to healthcare. So I talked with the author about what this and other similar experiences meant. I mean, we know that this experience was an experience with a patient and it involved frustration with insurance. But I wanted to know what were other similar experiences that he had had. He explained that most of these experiences that influenced him were experiences where he was dealing with patients, which he didn't have much of an opportunity to do before he was a medical scribe because, well, he was an undergrad. He wasn't in medical school yet. So we added here, working in patient settings. And that is the end of the edits we did to this part of the text. These are the edits that you watched me do. These are the edits we did together. This is the final edited document that I produced with the author when we did the edits. And we produced all of this together over the phone, talking through all the options, discussing the background. And I worked with him until he was satisfied with his personal statement. I'd be interested to know how you would edit this personal statement. Of course, you didn't have the background of talking with the author like I did, but there's not one right way to edit a personal statement. I mean, if you paused this and went back, if you looked at this page and then compared it to this page, you'll probably see that I did some things differently. I can already see the very first couple of sentences. I think I edited slightly differently. So if you took this text before I walked through all the edits and did your own edits, I'd like to know how you edited it. I hope this movie gave you an idea of one way to do the editing process. Let me know if it's been helpful. I'd be happy to show you how I edit more. Thanks for watching and happy writing. And nap time for this one. Right, bud?